stitch, sparkle, shine.
If you have leftover fabric, let's turn it into something cute and sellable, like this cute little mini tote bag that I made.
Scraps don't belong in a drawer, darling. They belong on a price tag.
It's perfect for gifting, listing in your shop, or just using it like I do as an everyday tote bag. It's just really cute. So I cut up all the scraps that I had to make the front pocket right here, and I also added a very easy little slip pocket on the inside. It is fully lined. The fabric on the inside I used was a tablecloth. I made some very thin straps. I do like thinner straps on my tote bags just because I find it easier to stay on my shoulder, but you can make your straps as thick as you want to trim around the pocket. I think it would be a really cute little Bible tote bag as well, or just a tote bag in general to carry whatever you wanted. Let's get right into it. First, I grabbed a piece of cardboard. I used some of the cardboard that I wrapped the fabric around that I got from Amazon, and I just used one of them and cut a 3x3 inch square out of it. And then that's what I'm going to use to just place on top of the fabric and just cut out a whole bunch of 3x3 inch squares from all of the scraps that I had. I had a ton of scraps left over from some of the Bible covers that I've been making and selling on Etsy. And so the fabric is so beautiful, I just didn't want to throw them away. And so I decided to just make something with them. So that's how I came up with this idea for this tote bag. Then I cut out some strips for the straps because I did have some kind of narrow pieces left over. And so I cut out some for the straps. And then after that, I just went ahead and just sewed together 3 rows of the 3x3 inch squares. So I just grabbed 6 of them and just sewed them all together. I used about a 1/4 inch seam allowance to sew the squares together. And then I pressed all the seams open. And then I just placed each row on top of each other and then sewed those together as well. After sewing each piece together, I just made sure to really give the seams a good press and make sure they're all open and pressed really nicely. At first, I wanted to make the whole bag out of the scraps with the 3x3 inch squares, but then I just decided to make the front pocket. I thought it would be a nice accent piece on the front of the bag. After that, I grabbed some of the larger scraps, and I just cut out enough to make the front and back panels. So you may have bigger scraps, but the entire front and back panel is 12 inches by 15 inches. And then I used a tablecloth that I had, and I just used that for the lining. And so I cut 12 by 15 for the lining on 2 pieces. So I cut 2 pieces out, 12 by 15 for the lining. And then after that, I took the strips that I cut out for the straps and I just sewed those together to make one long strap. And then I used that lining fabric again to cut out 2 pieces the same size as the pocket piece. One piece is going to line the back of the pocket, and the other piece I'm going to use to make an inside slip pocket on the inside of the bag, on the back lining side. And to make the strap, I just used this fold over method where I folded the edges inward towards the center and then just folded it again. And I did press it before I folded it just to make sure the creases were nice and creased, so that way when I folded it, it would just kind of stay in place. And after that, I just made a mark 2.5 inches from the bottom of the front panel and just pinned the strap right over the mark. And so I'm going to pin all the way up to the top of the bag, but then I'm going to stop about 1.5 inches from the top from the top of the bag. Actually, I think I'm going to stop maybe about 2 inches from the top of the bag. And I just measured along the way to make sure the straps are pretty close to the same measurement from the left and right sides of the bag. These straps are pretty narrow, so if you do want to make a wider strap, if you have enough scraps, you can just go ahead and cut out a wider piece of material to make the straps a little bit wider. And then I just went ahead and sewed the other side of the strap at the bottom all the way up, and then stopped about 2 inches from the top of the bag. And I'm leaving room because what I'm going to do is fold the top of the bag about 1/4 inch and then fold it again about 1/2 inch. Then I'm going to clip it in place, give it a good pressing. And then now I'm going to start with attaching the front pocket piece. The two straps were about 8 inches apart, so what I did was I'm going to trim the pocket piece about 8 inches wide. But first I'm just going to fold the top of the pocket inward twice and then put the lining piece right underneath the fold and then pin everything in place. And then I'm going to just sew right underneath, right at the bottom of the fold, just to secure the lining and the fold on the pocket. I used about 1/4 inch seam allowance to sew the top rim of the pocket. And after that, I just cut off the excess from the bottom of the lining fabric. And since the straps were 8 inches apart, I do want to make sure the pocket fits underneath both sides of the strap. So I just cut it down to about 8 inches. And then I folded the bottom backwards of the pocket piece. I folded it backwards about 1/4 inch. And then I'm just going to sew it in place. I am going to cover that bottom part of the pocket with a little bit of lace trim. But for now, just to hold it in place, I just went ahead and sewed it. And then after that, I just placed it right underneath the straps and then pinned it all in place. Just making sure that the straps cover the raw edges of the pocket. I did place the pocket about 2 inches from the top of the bag because when you box the corners, I'm going to box the corners a good bit. So I just wanted to make sure the pocket wasn't going to be a part of that. And then I grabbed some lace. I did have some scraps left over of that, so I just cut a few pieces to put on the outside of the straps and then along the bottom of the pocket. I'm just going to tuck that lace right underneath the outside of the strap, folding the top and bottom of it inward so that way the raw edges of the lace doesn't stick out, and just pin everything in place. And after adding the lace to the left and right, I'm just going to go ahead and pin a little bit along the bottom of the pocket. So now the front of the bag is pretty much done. I'm just gonna go ahead and sew down the left and right sides of the strap. I'm gonna stop towards the top of the bag. And then after I stop, I'm gonna add the lining to the back of the bag before I sew across the top of the front panel. Because just like we did the front pocket, I'm gonna stick the lining underneath that fold and then sew across it. And then after that, I'm gonna continue sewing around the whole strap. So I'm gonna sew and then stop. I am gonna sew a little box right in the corner just to make the straps a little more secure in the front. And now I'm just going up the other side of the bottom of the strap all the way up to the top. And that's gonna secure the lace and the strap, trimming right over the lace and the pocket piece. I did make a little box right here in the corners. And now I'm just gonna go and do the other side the exact same way, starting from the bottom. And as you can see right now, I don't have the lining piece on the back of the front panel, but I am gonna add it in a minute before I continue sewing the rest of the strap. So now I have the lining on the back, and so I just continued on sewing the top of the strap, and then I sewed the entire strap, and now I'm just gonna go across the entire top of the bag. And now that that's done, I'm gonna do the back panel the exact same way, attaching the strap. Pinning everything in place first. And now I'm gonna take the lining piece for the back panel and just add a little pocket. I just sewed around all four corners and left the opening and then turned it inside out, pressed it. And then I'm just gonna sew along the top of the pocket and then sew around the sides and the bottom to secure it onto the lining piece for the back of the bag. And then I'm gonna tuck the lining right underneath the top rim of the bag and then pin it in place. And then before I start sewing the whole rest of the strap, I'm gonna stick some pins to hold the lining to the back panel. And then sew the rest of the strap, and then sew right across the top of the bag again. You can pause any of the video. I know I'm going pretty fast, but if there's a step that you need to do, you can always pause it, rewind it. Now I'm gonna place both of the bag layers together, right sides facing, and just clip everything in place. And then I'm going to sew with about a 1/2 inch seam allowance along the sides and the bottom. And then I'm going to cut off about half of the seam just to eliminate some of the bulk. With the quilted fabric and the tablecloth lining, everything was starting to get a little thick. But I was able to still sew through all layers with my sewing machine. I just had to go slow across some of the bulky parts. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and box the corners. So what I did was I made a point on the edges and then made a mark 3 inches from the point of the bag and then drew a line. And then I'm just gonna box the corners on both sides. And then cut off the excess. And after this step, I'm gonna take some of that tablecloth and just cut out a couple strips so I can cover up the raw edges of the bag. That did take a little bit of time just to make sure I covered it up nice and neatly, and going over some of the bulky part was a little hard to do, but I was able to cover them all up. I just folded some fabric right over the raw edges along the sides and then along the bottom, and that's it. And just like that, you've got a gorgeous mini tote from scrap. You can sell it solo, or you can bundle it with a cute little coin pouch for extra value. So let me know if you tried this one and tag @SoGirlyBags if you do.
Fast, fun, and fabulous. You better make 2, because you're going to want to keep one.